Let me share my screen and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, sure. Rupesh.
Okay. So we want to start writing custom handlers, right? That's the whole point. And but before we go there, I want to talk about a couple of other things, okay, which are little important to understand. Okay. So,
Are you recording, right? Rupesh?
yeah, it's getting recorded. You can see my browser, right?
Yes, I'm seeing the query local.
Okay, fine, fine.
Yes,
So,
it's CQL.
all right. So, whenever we write those custom logics, most of the time you will select from DB, you will insert in DB, right? You write some sort of queries, and those queries have to be database agnostic, yeah, because CAP is designed in a way that uh, it works with any most of the databases, right? So if you see this databases section, right? Not every database is supported, but yeah, I mean whatever is supported, right? You see all of these things, yeah. There are basically this dependencies like at the rate cap.js, okay? So basically for SQLite, Postgre, and SAP HANA, yeah. So you basically can work with different databases, right? And then how you can work with those. Basically, if you check your package JSON, yeah. Currently, I think it is SQLite, but you can uh, maybe add from PostgreSQL. But if you want to with HANA Cloud, you can add this. Yeah. So it's more about switching those. Yeah. But if if we just changing this, it works. How does exactly does it work, right? So that means it is database agnostic. Yeah. So what happens is that if I again go back, so we have seen CDL, right? So I showed you also that it can be compiled to SQL, right? Or various, like SQLite, all those things, right? SQLite, SQLite, PostgreSQL, SQLite, PostgreSQL, all those sort of SQLs can be seen, right? We saw that. Okay. So CDL gets converted into database specific SQL, right? That's what we have seen. Now there are other notations also. So for example, if I go to CSN, okay, so it is sort of a JSON. So it stands for core schema notation. Okay. So it's also some people, it's pronounced as season, not CSN, my bad. So we also call it as season. Yeah. So if you just see this definition, it's a notation for compact representation of CDS models tailored to serve an optimized format to share and interpret models with minimal footprint and dependencies. Basically, it is like in a JSON. Yeah, these are my field, these are my element, these are the properties. Yeah. So you can also compile it to CSN. Yeah. You can just say CDS compile to CSN. Yeah. The way you are compiling to SQL, similarly, you can also compile it to CSN. Okay. It's more of a JSON schema. Okay. So basically, you have the full entity relationship models, depicted in this. Okay. So if you see, this makes CSN models a perfect source to generate target models such as ODM or APN API. So, when we talk about this external service consumption, let's say you want to consume an external API, then, moment to convert your EDMX file, which you have it in OData, okay, or an open API specification, you can generate CDS out of that. Because everything will be a CDS. Yeah. Any service you connect to, let's say sales order, you want to get the data from a sales order service, you can create a CDS model out of the EDMX. And then that time, this CSN will be used. So it will be like an in-between layer, yeah, in-between layer between your EDMX file and your CDS file. So it is in between. Okay. See, you can, for example, see this. Yeah, it looks like this. So, this is CSN model. Example is this. So, what are the definitions? So you have some type, another type, then another type. Okay, foo bar, these are the entities, yeah. The type is integer. So, you can see, and you can also present this kind of an CSN model into YAML. Okay, so I mean YAML and JSON mostly are same, but whatever format you prefer. So, that's how oh, this CDS model can be represented in CSN. Do we need to really worry? At least you should know this. Okay, sometimes you might play around with this if you're trying to build a plugin. But yeah, I'm not really sure if if you are going to do such kind of complicated use case. But you need to understand this concept of CSN, CDL, and the actual SQL, which gets generated as per the database. Okay, so if you see over here, there is an enum type, okay, which is represented in CSN. Now, if you see this entity definition, yeah, this is I think will help what I'm trying to say. So you have an entity called products. So it says definition. This is a product definition whose kind is entity, and these are the elements. Basically, these are the fields: ID, title, and the price, and then the type of that. Yeah, it looks like what we define in CDS, right? It's just a different notation. Okay, and then comes what we want to learn today is the CQL. Okay, so CDS query language, yeah, or CAP query language, whatever you want to call. So it's a CQL. It is based upon standard SQL, which is enhanced. Basically, the syntax is mostly like SQL. Okay. Why they've written? Because they want to support a lot of databases, right? So it can be Postgre, like I said, so all the databases are supported. So let's say I write select from, let's say what is the syntax, then that select from should work upon all the databases. If I say insert into this entity, it should work for any kind of database, right? I just have to change into packages and the database I want to support. Okay. So this is what is this CQL. And this is, you know, I would say, let's say 80% of the CAP developers they don't know this. Okay. Uh, so if you see now, over here, I mean I'll definitely show you in code also. So if you see this, I'm just doing a select. It looks like SQL, but little bit different, yeah. So it is select name and then it is selecting an address dot street. So basically there was an association called address in this author's entity. This association, which our entity is referring to, let's say address, it has a field called street. So you can use this. I think we talked about this earlier also, post street projections. If you remember previous recording, I already talked enough. So you can write a simple select from your, you know, entity. Okay, and there is another way if you want to go for a JSON based and an object based selection. So you can just select from authors and then name comma address dot street. Okay, and you can also do this nested expands. Yeah, so select from authors. In this curly braces, I'm specifying the fields, name, and then address, and then basically this is nested expand. Okay, so from this address nested entity, I'm getting the street, and then there's town again, which is an association. So from this town entity, I'm getting name and country. Okay, this is like a nested expand example. Okay, but you will get in basically when you get the output of this select will be like this, an array which has the name field, an address, yeah, along with street name, whatever you defined it, right? You'll get a basically like this. Okay, you can specify alias, yeah, and that field will be visible for whatever alias field you have defined. Okay, you can also give expressions, right? So basically, it is looking like SQL, but definitely think in terms of objects. Yeah, when you're working with this, think in terms of objects. That's what I would say. Yeah, the set from books in curly braces, you start specifying an object, basically the field name. Yeah, field of an object containing the field list. Okay, so title, author, again an object, we specify the field list. Again an object, we specify the field list. Yeah, for even for nested entities. Okay, so it can get really complicated. Yeah. So you can also specify star. Yeah. Like we know in SQL, you can specify star, right? So I can simply say select star from books, or maybe over here they're saying select from books and then give the field names in this object. First is star, so get everything from books. And then from author entity, just get the author dot name, and they want to call this as author. The field name will be author. Okay, so you can also use this star wildcard character. Okay, you can specify excluding if you want to exclude any field. Okay, that's also possible. What all examples do we have? Path expressions, yeah, you can also give like this. It's fine. So you are just kind of filter. So I want to get the authors where name is Emily Broad and the books of that. So a little complicated, but this is called as path expression. Yeah, this square bracket where you're passing your filter condition, kind of a where. Okay, this is called as path expressions. Yeah. So for example, if you see the definition, also use path expressions to navigate along associations. Okay, as follows. So I'm navigating along these associations. Okay. What else should I tell you? Uh, I mean, even join is possible. Yeah. So I can join books with authors. Okay. So from books, I'm getting books.title and then author.name. Basically, yeah. And then left author join with authors. And this is my, basically, it's more like a normal, SQL left join, right? So it is same books is getting left joined with authors on this join condition. Okay. And if you remember correctly, when I was showing the API testing also, you would have seen, or maybe if there is a normalization, if the field name that gets generated is this underscore ID. Yeah. The join condition is like that. Author.id is equal to books.author underscore ID. And then I'm getting title field from the books and the name field from the author entity. Yeah. So after the from join also, you can get the fields from different tables. Okay. So I think that's it. So we need not go into a lot of these things, but you can always play around with this. Okay. I think it's fine. Yeah. So this what I mean by CQL. Okay. So now in CQL, if I want to further go, maybe CQN, should we check this? Yeah. Next thing is query notation. Okay. It is basically CQN is a canonical plain object such basically CQL gets passed into CQN. Okay, another terminology. So we had CQL. Now CQN is basically an object representation of this. So basically you can parse your SQL into CQN. And this is actually the query which will be executed, not your SQL. SQL is an in-between layer. You will write SQL, definitely you'll write SQL, but actually this will get compiled into CQN. That's what is the definition, okay? So for example, I I want to, how will you generate the CQN? Yeah, it's in your code. You will just say select. So basically, when we're generating the CQL, there are let's say two ways. Yeah, there are two ways. One is this template literal, which we know in JavaScript, right? You use this tilde to generate this template literal. Okay. So I just need to say cds.ql, okay, and pass my, the actual SQL as a template literal, and then it gives me the SQL query. That's how you can generate a SQL query. Okay. Or the other way is instead of going with this template literal, I can go for what we saw earlier also in SQL example, like select dot from. Okay. So this is like an select. So basically, a lot of dots coming in. Okay. This is more like select dot from and dot entity like that. Okay. You can use this another way instead of going for this template literal. This is actually called as Fluent API. Okay, you can build query like this also. Okay, and then you can simply use C as your run and pass your CQL. Okay, this then if you so like I said, right, so CQL gets converted into CQN. If you want to generate CQN, it will be more like this. Okay, you can also parse it, but this again CQN is like an intermediate layer. So if you're getting confused for the time being, let's think about how to create SQL and how to execute. Okay, you can also generate CQN objects. Okay, like this, and then you can. So all of these are query example. One is this template literal. The second is Fluent API based query, and the third is CQN query. But eventually, all of these are queries which can be simply passed to your cds.run method, and then you will need to pass your query basically, and then you get the results. But in a nutshell, if you're getting confused,
So
you just need to
in
generate
our
a query and then await. So you pass the query into cds.run. This is a pretty simple thing. I'll show you an example. But yeah,
but
so
in our programming, do we use a CQL or CQN?
now it's up to you. Everything is so you see, query is query can be generated using CQN also. Okay, so it's more about parsing, right? So see, it is more like you guys working with it is a different representation, right? So which one is better, which one is not? Your preference. I personally prefer Fluent API. Okay. Or sometimes I go for this, temporary literal. I prefer these two. Okay, this is too complicated. But when you will see, if you remember yesterday's class, if you're going to the recording, so there was this in the request object, you will see a query object. Yeah. So if you just say request.query, then you will see this. So don't get confused. So why is that one? So basically, CAP framework is using this internally. Okay, so more you understand this CQN, you can, for example, you can change CQN also, right, at runtime. Sometimes this happens, okay? Believe me, it will happen sometime. But will you encounter this? I encountered it once, or maybe two times actually, where I had to change, the query was getting generated by the framework. I was doing some custom filtration. Okay, there was some issue. Let's take it like that. I had to modify the where clause. Then I was getting the CQN object, and I modified that query, because I knew, how the CQN works. Okay, but will you do it? I'm not very sure. Yeah, I think most of the time you should be fine with these two. Okay, but my job is to explain you all the concepts. So, once you start reading this documentation, once you get more, used to this with CQL, don't get confused. And eventually, everything is a query. It depends upon your preference, yeah, which one you like to work. Okay, but I think this is good enough. Yeah, these two are good enough. Okay, any confusions now? You see, now they are giving
Yeah,
this is like in TypeScript. Okay, so see your how TypeScript. I mean, don't get confused. I think it's fine. But if you see this, right? So you'll have some columns array. Okay, maybe it's better. You start with a normal CQL, which I'll show you. Yeah, and then you if you really want to go into CQN, okay, like 1% of the use case, you can go there. Okay, so if you see this, right, this looks little complicated. So this is like in CQN example. Okay, they're inserting into this books. But if it was a SQL, I would have simply said insert dot into books. Pretty simple. Okay. But because it is they're showing it by CQN, so it is getting little, you see the reference, right? So insert colon and another object into another column. So basically it's like object nested objects, right? And then the reference, basically in reference you pass your entity names, and then you give another comma, and then you pass your entries. Yeah. Basically your this is an array where you're creating two entries. Yeah. So two records are getting inserted into these books.
but how do we know like when we need to use the CQL or CQN in our project?
Now that's what anything is fine, but framework is technically at framework level, CQN is getting used. At developer level, at your use case level, you don't have to worry a lot about CQN. So you will normally work with this template literal. Okay, template literal or this fluent API. I'll show you both the things. Okay, template literal and fluent API. Okay, but I can't, skip this topic, okay? Because this is like at framework level, what happens? You see, they are defined a lot of classes, right? You see, everything is a class, and then you see this class, select is a class, right? So, you might say what is going on, right? So you can start understanding this, not right now, okay? Maybe after 6 or 8 months, if you really want to understand, okay? So everything is a class, and everything is going as an object. Everything is going as a class object, basically. Okay. You see, so these are the expressions which are supported. Reference we saw, list we saw, functions you can pass. It can get really complicated, okay? So it is more, I mean, again, I won't recommend this for the time being, okay? I think it's better we can skip this, okay? Maybe it's an advanced level thing, okay? Even I'm not fully comfortable, so every time I check this documentation, if I have to modify the CQN, okay? But let me show you maybe another page which is better than this. CDS.service, CDS.queries. Okay, I think this is the better place. Yeah, I think this is you can refer this for the timing. Okay, maybe I'll paste it in the chat also. Okay, and this is good enough for let's say 99% of your project cases. You need to understand this. Okay, so this is I think we should refer. Yeah, we will do like this. Okay, so let's focus back on this constructing queries. Okay, how you can create a query. I showed you that cds.ql. Yeah, this module you can generate a query, right? And then you can execute that, right? So for example, and I told you temporary literal and the fluent API. Yeah, so this is an example of fluent API where it is more like dot notation. Okay, you see, Fluent API style with query by example objects for where clauses and order by clauses. An example, so I just say select dot from, give an entity name, again another dot where, and in this where function, I pass my another object ID 201, and then I space another dot. Okay, this is like chaining, right? This is chaining. So every time I put a dot, this is actually chaining. Okay, so basically I'm still generating. I'm not done. This is like in JavaScript chaining, right? So it's like uh, uh, how should I explain? So let's say you have a method, okay? You have a class and a method. I create an object of that class and I say object dot method name, and then which in turn that method gives me another object, and I can again say another dot, and then I give that different method name. So it is a chaining. Okay, this is like chaining of functions. So if you this is a JavaScript concept, yeah, I think you will know this. The chaining in JavaScript. Okay. Yeah, method chaining, yeah, for example. Yeah, you see over here, so they have the first name, okay? They first converted to uppercase, okay? So I will get it capital letters. And after I got that, they are again doing a trim, right? So first is this, and then they again chain with another function, okay? Is it fine? So basically what is trim do will
Yeah.
do? Trim will remove the this empty spaces. Yeah. So they have defined some, you know. So basically you're working with the same, with the maybe a different object or maybe a same object. It depends. So basically string, any string you take first name, I can directly apply dot trim, right? Which will remove just this, right? So trim I can do. If I just do a uppercase without trimming, I will get in uppercase, right? So, but it's a string level function, right? Uppercase and trim. But then I can chain this. Okay. So I don't have to write multiple
It's,
lines. Multiple lines of code is
it's
not needed.
basically like we're continuing with different commands.
You're continuing with different functions on that object.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You see, it is a parameter that simplifies for calling a method. You see, it is a mechanism for calling a method on another method of the same object. Just read this line. It is a mechanism for calling a method on another method of same object. So basically, you can chain. Okay, maybe let me go back if there is a simple example. Yeah, I think this is better. Yeah. So you have a class called calculator. Okay, and it has this constructor, and I have add. I have so all these are different functions. I can add, calculator can add, you can subtract, multiply, divide, and then finally I have this get result, right? So all these are different functions I have in this class constructor. Okay, let's see how we can change. So I will instantiate my calculator class, okay, which is fine, right? And then, I would have usually said, I would have called this method separately, right? Right? Dot add, correct? I would have called this method differently, right? First I will add, then I will subtract. But over here, what I'm doing, Okay. So I'm doing it chaining. Okay. So basically I'm getting the object of this only, right? Every time I do a new calculator dot add, okay, what I get back is the same object only. So that I can again call another method, subtract. Okay, so first I add, then I subtract, then I multiply, then I divide, and finally I do another chaining by the get result, and I get the output. Is this clear? Now I think. So you see, in this
Yes.
method, in
Yes.
this example, each method returns this. So it is returning me the object. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm getting the same object so that I can continue executing the different methods because I'm getting the same object, right? So I can continue executing different methods. That's what we mean by chain. Okay. And finally, the chain is broken once I have the get result. Okay. Okay. Why this was, working? Because they were returning this. If you see, return this, return this, return. Every time they were returning the current object. That's why you were able to chain. I think this is a pretty nice example. I hope now things are clear what I mean by chaining. If they were not
Yes.
returning
Yes.
this, you would not have been able to do this. You'd have to call it again, right? Multiple times. Yeah. But with method chaining, if you're returning the object, the same object, you can do that. Okay. You see, this is apparently, I mean, again, I don't know if you have done it in a web or I don't know which is your programming. So you are into a web, is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Previously?
I know the job. Yeah. I have. Yes.
So try
I
this
have
in a
some
web.
Java background as well.
Yeah, yeah. So you try this. So
Yeah.
this is like any language supports this, okay? Only thing is that you need to
Yeah.
return this. Okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, your kids might not really like it. Yeah. Okay. So this is like chaining. Okay. I'm not sure if your web supports, but just try it out. Okay.
Yeah.
All
Sure.
right. So that's what, when I say select, it will return me a query, partially generated query. I can continue generating the query. And then I say dot from books, dot where, and then dot order by. So, you know, I mean, it will automatically complete also. Don't worry. Okay. So once I start writing in cap environment, so you will see what is possible. So if I just select dot from books and I say dot, it will automatically show me that where and order by these things are possible. Okay. So basically, I'm generating a query via Fluent API. Okay. When I say Fluent API, so basically use this objects. Okay. The Fluent API with query by example objects for the where clause and order by clauses. Okay.
Yeah.
So now if you see again, they're talking about CQN. Okay, don't get confused. I already shown you. Okay. So module CQL.ql provides facilities to construct queries in CQN, which is what you were seeing earlier,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
These ones. Yeah. So see, everything is getting generated into CQN, but you don't need to worry. You just need to go with Fluent API or template literal. These two. Okay. You need to understand these two. Okay, for the time being. And then you say cds.ql instead of generate. So one is this Fluent API style, and the other is template literal. So this time I'm passing everything. Looks, this is more template literal is more like SQL. There's no dot notation.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
There are no objects getting passed. Over here, you're passing these objects, right? Yeah. Now, you
Yes.
see in the variable, I'm passing an object. In order by, I'm passing this object, right? But in this one, template literal, you simply pass your query like this. A simple SQL. And then if you pass in
Yeah.
dynamic, you can just say dollar.
Uh,
Okay, like here you're passing ID 201. Here I'm passing also ID 201. Okay. And then you can also mix them. Again, don't get confused. You can also mix, like first part is by Fluent API. And but the after select dot from is Fluent API, right? But then you see template literal also getting used, right? This
better.
one.
We can mix it. Mix and match. Yeah.
So like I said, you can play around it, okay? So I mean, the use case, I would not tell you right now, okay, when I should go for template literal. Probably you take it as an assignment, think over it, okay? I can always tell you, right? But I mean, will they ask you in interview, first of all, right? Do you think the interviewer knows this, all of these things, especially in India? Don't worry, okay? They won't even go there, okay? Mostly they will know this. and they don't even know this terminology. Okay, they will simply say, write the queries, right? They'll say, okay, write the queries. They don't even know CQL, by the way. Okay, so you're lucky that I'm teaching you these complete concepts. Uh, 99% of the trainer, they don't teach you this. They simply, see, when I do select, in my editor, in my bash, which is the P Studio or in VS Code, the moment I select it, I'll immediately see dot from. It will automatically suggest the syntax, right? And that's how people write. But they don't understand, all these terminologies, which I have told you. And you see the fourth example. So we know this Fluent API, we know this template literal. We can also mix these two, and then finally the dangerous guy, manually constructing CQN objects. Okay, the expression, you see the same query, yeah, going like more like an object, right? Okay, again select from, yeah, and then where, and then order by. So this I won't recommend at this stage. Okay, don't get confused. But you know the all the four ways now, right? Not four, rather three. This third is a mix. Okay, but yeah, let's call it a fourth, different way. So you have all these four ways. Okay, which one you will uh, work with? Mostly these two, or maybe third. This you might, again, I'm saying you might 1% of the time where you want to change something which a CAF framework is generating. Okay, at that level, if you want to do. Okay, and then they are calling something called as API facades. Okay, so this CDS.QL actually, I mean, this select, insert, update, delete, right? So, if it has to auto suggest, it should know, right? What is the select, correct? It should know, right? What is the select? If I, like I said, right, it will automatically suggest what is the next keyword which is possible, right? So that's why these are API facades. Again, I don't think you have to import it. For example, they're destructuring the CDS.query language, and then they are kind of having this select insert. I think you don't need to do this. Okay. You see, API is made available through global objects, select, insert, update, delete. Okay. And then how will you get this? For example, select from, if you're going for, especially, see, if you do it like colon books, okay, this is kind of hard coding, right? I'm selecting from books. But let's say I am calling this as, I don't know, list of books. Okay, I don't call it as books in my service. I call it as list of books. Then this will fail, right? Because I'm kind of putting in literal. I'm kind of hard coding it,
Yeah.
right? So this can break. Are you able to understand? So this will
Hmm.
not give
Yes.
you compile time error for sure. This will not give you compile time error. But at runtime, this will break. It has possibility, right? If you are not being careful, if you miss S, let's say, right? If you call it as book, if you miss S, you're gone, right? This will dump. Yeah. What you typically do is that where is that? Yeah. So you get the entities also. So I just say cds dot entities, and I get all the entities which are available in my in my service basically. Okay, I'll show you this. Okay. And then I use that instead of colon books. So that I'm sure that this won't break. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it, right?
But
So
if
this
you have
this will this
multiple
will give you an
entities,
error. This
how?
will give you an error if I'm getting books, and if I say book list of books without the quotes, without a single quote, then it will say, hey, list of books is not, you have not defined it, right? You have not imported it by this. Okay.
But for example, in the entities, if, let's say in the entity, we have multiple entities in our namespace, right? So how do this know, like, okay, which entity it has to select, books entity or others entity, something? If you just write like CDS dot entities, right?
So it will give you all the
It
entities,
can.
whatever are available in your application. Okay. I'll show you this, how you can get. So don't worry, just try to understand the concept, but eventually it can read your data model, it can connect to your service. Let's say you have defined multiple services, you can connect, and then you will read the entities only from that. Okay. So it is smart. Okay. But if you don't define, it will read whatever all the entities are there, it will give you everything. Series of entities will give you everything. Okay. I mean, don't worry, I'll show you. Okay. And then finally, you simply, like I said, you just say, you just use this, I mean, a lot of ways, okay? db.run, okay? So if you remember my previous statement, everything in cap is a service. So I can say cds.db.run, I pass my query, or I can simply connect to my service, which is what I would show you. And then I say, and after I've connected to my service, I just say my service name, cats, basically catalog service, cats.run. I can pass the query at this level. Okay, so either I connect to my service, okay, and then I pass the query, or I use the database level. Now, can you tell me when should I go for database level? When should I go for service level? So you have two options, right? So I have framed my query. Okay, either I can execute against the database, or I can connect to my service and execute that query against that service, right? So instead of database service, you can also send queries to other services, local or remote ones. Yeah, they have pretty much explained it. Is this clear? Can execute
No,
with the DB. So, uh, everything in CAP is a service. Okay, just try to remember this. Everything in CAP is a service. So even my database is a service. So I can connect to my, like I'm connected to my service, catalog service. I can also say cds.connect.to, and in quotes, I just say DB. Okay, the DB service name is colon DB. Okay, so I can execute, I'll get DB and then I say db.run query. So I can execute my queries against the database. So let's say in the database I have 50 entities, while in my service I only have exposed 10, right? So if I want to do something at DB level, I'll connect to my database and then run my query. If I want to just work with the exposed entities, those 10 entities, then I will connect to my service.
service. Okay. Okay.
And in fact, you don't even need to connect, it is already connected. Okay, if you are starting your application, it is already connected to your DB, right? It is already connected to your service. You don't need to write this. If you're going for external API calls, which I'll show you maybe a lot later, then you can go for this cds.connect.to catalog service. Well, mainly for external service, you will connect. Or in rare cases, you might have to connect in DB. Okay, but it is automatically connected. Okay, so don't try to connect unnecessarily if something is already connected. Yeah, that's what my point was. But over there, they're trying to connect always. Okay, and then instead of writing, you using this db.run passing queries, you can simply await. Is this fine? So instead of
Yes.
so you can simply await. You see, again, you can alternatively just await a constructed query, whichever query you have generated, right? You can simply await, which by default passes the query. You see, by default it will pass to your database. Are you getting this point? So by default it will pass to database. You can simply await and then you'll get the books. Again, it is getting more like a BAP, right? You're simply selecting, simply awaiting and getting back the results. And over here they have used again a mix, right? So ID title going as a template literal and then
Template
dot
letter.
from Fluent API, right? Then again a template literal. Okay? They're mixing it. Okay. So like I said, you don't need to connect to database. It is already connected. So you can simply get from cds.db, you'll automatically get a DB.
Okay.
Okay. And then you can also do this, okay, db.read. Now you're getting confused, right? You have so many db.run, db.read. Okay. So it is going to take some time, okay? But there are a lot of options, okay? But you have to understand, sometimes you will connect to database, sometimes, okay? When I think once you start coding real time, you will eventually see. But for simple use cases, it is already connected to a database, it is already connected to your local services, which are there within your application. But if you want to connect to external service on an external database, then yes, you need to use this cds.connect.to. Okay. So for example, they're going to collect a catalog service and generating a query, and then again a get. You said I was talking about this dot run. Now you have get. The get is also there. Get is like you just want to do a get. But then do you have put update all those things? Yes, it is there. Okay. But I think it's simple. You always go for run. Okay, SRV dot run. Yeah, whatever is your service name, cats or SRV, you just say SRV or cats dot run. That's it. Remember these. Okay, you don't need to for the timing. Talk about what is this cat. It's a similar thing. Okay, okay, but yeah, this is I think simple. They're doing dynamic things. Okay, avoiding SQL injection. See, this is getting really complicated. Okay, I'm not sure. Have you done any kind of SQL injection in a app?
Actually, no.
That's why. That's why I don't like a web, okay, frankly speaking, because even the you guys have been working on a web a lot of times. You have not, you run this ATC checks, right?
VDC checks, yeah.
So you have never, have not you ever seen things like, SQL injection, ATC check? Okay, just read it, okay? So CAP also is having this possibilities of how to avoid SQL injection, okay? I won't go into deep, okay? This is too much of documentation, too much, okay? More I go, more you'll get confused. But this is, see, entire CAP pad documentation, nobody will read through, right? Especially if you attend other trainings, they will not even open this. Okay. They will simply write the queries, they will not explain you all of these things. And then one fine day, once you're working in project, you would like to search something, right? You will come here and then you, hey, where should I search, right? Okay. That will also happen. Okay. I think it's better for the time being. Okay. Only thing which is probably uh, I want to also talk about this REPL. Okay, then we will maybe not do it today, but tomorrow I'll show you. So CDS REPL. Okay. Again, so like for example, I'll ask you a simple question. If I have to try something, okay, I want to understand, if it is how if I want to get some data from let's say VBAK table and I want to show it as an output to someone. Okay, just a simple. I have a very fresher person in my team. I want to explain him how ABAP OpenSQL is, right? ABAP is OpenSQL, right? So how you can write OpenSQL, right? By the OpenSQL, CQL, do you think both are same, right? Mostly they are, conceptually they're same, right? OpenSQL works with, even though they call it as OpenSQL, now it in S/4HANA only HANA is supported, right? But if you remember earlier ECC world, it used to support different databases, right? So CQL is also like that. It supports different databases. Okay. Now, my question was, let's say if I want to explain, how you can select the data and how I can show the data, let's say in an output. Okay. Or how I can, give a demo. What will you do in a web? What artifact will you create in a web? I just want to get the first 10 records and just show it as an output. What will you create in a web?
But report, we create a report, right?
Report. You will create a report, right? Now,
Yes.
not similarly, okay, this is much better, okay. Again, that's why I don't like a BAP, okay. So this is something called a CDS REPL, read, evaluate, print, and loop. This is kind of your trying out stuff, okay. So
Ah, okay, okay.
I can always try.
Debugging the
I
process.
don't have to, I simply go to my terminal, okay, my basically my application, right? You have terminal, right? Where you write CDS, watch all those
Mm-hmm.
commands, right? So I'll simply say CDS REPL. I will start my server, you know, I want to try out. Okay. Let's say, you're in learning stage, you want to try out a lot of syntaxes. You want to try out templateral, you want to try out CQN, like complicated concepts, right? You can use the CDS REPL. Okay, and try out your query. For example, over here, you are in CDS REPL, and now they are generating a query like this. Okay, and then which will actually generating a query like this, CDS.QL. Okay, so if you remember, everything is a CQN, right? So behind the scenes, CAP will, even if you pass temp, little or fluent API, whatever you do, it will actually generate an CQN, which is what you're seeing here. So moment you do like this, it will generate this kind of a query object, okay? And then I can simply maybe just say, cds.run, okay? Or other ways, like I said, you can always await, right? A different form rather than doing for cds.run or srv.run or db.run, I can always simply await my query which I generated. I'll show you this. But I think now you're getting a feeler, right? How this TDS REPL is helping you. Okay. So do you want to proceed ahead, or I think it's enough? So you try to go through this. Okay, you just try to
Yeah, I will.
connect. I will do the hands-on tomorrow. But why I've covered this because it is really important, yeah. So that you start appreciating more, why we're writing CQL. Okay. So we didn't talk about, by the way, a lot of things. So maybe I can cover this also. Couple of simple methods. Okay. So you have select, we know select, right? If I'm just hovering, yeah, you can select. Okay. You can generate via a select query. You can have this insert query. Let's talk about insert. So here I'm having this objects, yeah, which I want to insert, and then I simply use insert books dot into my,
Books
sorry,
entity. I mean,
insert
books
books,
table or
basically, yeah,
entity.
these are my values. But mostly, people go like this. Yeah, this is simple. Insert dot into, and then you pass your values. Okay, you
Yeah,
can
of the
also use this dot
values. Yeah.
entries option. Okay, so serious identities I'm connecting to my books. I'm inserting into books, and via this dot entries option, you see, this is a function insert dot into where I can pass two things, my entity and the entries. That's what I'm doing. Insert dot into, I pass my entity and the entries. Okay, so this is a method or a function called into. Okay, method into. Yeah, see, all these are method. Okay, so this is an insert Fluent API. In CQN insert, this is more of an object. Like every object has function, right? It's thing like that. So CQN insert is an object which has functions called into. It has function called entries. Okay, you're getting now, right? It
Yeah,
has
yeah.
it has also a function called values. I can do it like this also. Instead of entries, I can probably pass. Okay, I have not given an example, but yeah, let's look what is rows. Okay, I can also pass rows. Insert into books. These are my columns and these are my rows.
Columns, so mirror rows. Yeah,
Against those columns, I have these rows.
rows. Yeah.
All these are different functions on your Fluent APIs, insert, select, update, upsert. Yeah, there are a lot of functions. All these are functions. If I go to
But
upsert,
like different ways to write a program, basically, different ways to write our select statement. Right? I mean, that's a SQL statement.
yeah, let's not go into a web, okay? Forget about a web, forget about whatever you know. This is the new syntax which you have to
Yeah,
get
yeah.
used to. Yeah, this is so that's what it's important you go through this documentation. These are CQN level, API level objects, okay? You see objects, which has all of these functions into entries, values, yeah. And you know about method chaining also. So, basically you can continue. Insert dot into dot entries, dot values. I can keep on writing, correct? By this method chaining.
Yes, yes.
So this insert is becoming my, current object. Yeah. Think of it this object, right? Which I can chain. Okay, I can chain by these functions. Okay, similarly, if I go to upsert, again, it has this entity. Basically, insert and upsert both are same. Upsert can also update, right? Insert cannot update, right? You know this. Upsert and insert difference, okay? Update will just update. Again, update have you can pass the entity and you also need to pass the key, right? Basically, like this. Yeah, the book which I want to update. Okay. Or also I can specify in where clause, but basically like when you are updating, right, you would like to pass the where clause, correct? Or maybe you pass
Very close.
directly in
Yes.
this function itself, in this entity. In this function itself, you can pass the key or you can pass in where clause. Okay. And then you can set the values, yeah. Yeah, over here, for example, update books ID, either a with or a set. Yeah, with is more like, Fluent API and set is more like I think set should also be possible with this Fluent API based approach, but over here they're giving the set example by this template literal, yeah, which is also fine. I mean, they're mixing it, right? But with dot set will also be there. Okay. You have where, let's talk about finally about delete, yeah. Delete is simple, same thing, yeah. In delete, you only have from and where. So from I give my entity name, and in where function I pass my this thing.
This one.
Yeah, whatever. Again, Fluent API based, right? Can I pass template literal here? Yes, you can do that. You don't want to go for this. Okay. Expressions are fine for the time being. Let's not overcomplicate, but this is then going into CQL. Sorry, CQN. Okay. So you can read more, but it's fine for the time being. We'll talk about overload is insert, update, delete. Okay, we'll try CDS REPL tomorrow. We will try these, different functions. Yeah, we'll try template literal. We'll try uh, the Fluent API, right? So I'll show you everything. Yeah, but CQN actually is little the next level. We'll see if we really need to do it. But I have already explained you the concept of this CQN, okay, which is kind of a compilation of your query language. I'll show you. I'll show you at least how your query once we start tomorrow, right? I'll show you how this CQN is getting auto-generated. Okay. But we will not work with CQN. Okay. We'll work with CQL. Yeah, query language, not CQN directly. Yeah. I'll show you the generation of this, but not like we'll not manipulate CQN. Okay. Unnecessary complicated stuff. We'll not do it at this stage. Okay. Okay. Fine.
In
Any
our
questions?
programming, we will go with CQL, right? I mean, usually in our programming.
Yeah. Usually CQL is good enough. Yes.
Okay.
All right then. Yeah. See you tomorrow. Uh, right. Okay. All right.